Tight, single-area films can be beautiful exercises in tension. Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window revealed how much suspense can be squeezed out of a film following a man stuck in his room while obsessively looking far outside his window, as well as crafting a tense murder plot all inside one New York apartment. Stephen Knight's Locke centers on a man in his car, torn between his family and his new family with a mistress. These elegantly simple narratives are magnificent when they land, but there's little room for error with few extraneous variables to distract the audience. Flight Risk, the new Mel Gibson directorial outing, is a similar kind of tale, following characters trapped in a dangerously small plane with even more of a dangerous man. Some elements and moments are effective, but they're layered with subplot details, character performances, and related choices that don't work as well as intended, firmly grounding an otherwise promising concept. Flight Risk follows Deputy U.S. Marshal Madeleine Harris, Michelle Dockery, as she attempts to escort criminal accountant Winston, Topher Grace, from his remote Alaskan hideout into custody so he can turn informant. All is going well, or at least it seems to be until their pilot Daryl Booth, Mark Wahlberg, reveals himself to be a hitman. As the pair are trapped in the tiny sky-bound plane with Wahlberg's deadly, sociopathic antagonist, who may also be their primary hope of aerial survival, Harris continues to make new discoveries that threaten other massive challenges for the protagonist. At times, the narrative works a little better than it could, given the film's threadbare plot and limited setting, but the film's logic and performances don't quite carry it through. In Flight Risk, Wahlberg makes for a capable sociopathic assassin, quickly shedding his nice pilot persona for a believable, death-glaring murderer. While he embodies the character well, the writing around his character gets a little repetitive. There's only so much one can do when the plot requires repeated incapacitation in the plane's tail, and their characters' contributions to the film's tapestry of dialogue involve a variety of threats of prison assaults to Winston. Dockery makes a sufficiently believable Harris, albeit a little stiff in the role, and while Grace fills out a character similar to some he's played before, he's solid in the role. Particular shout-out to Monababhat's pilot Hassan, who gives an exceptionally charismatic turn despite spending most of the movie reduced to a voice on a phone line. Narrative-wise, Flight Risk finds a decent overall balance through a variety of sources of tension: the presence of a maniacal assassin, Harris's inability to fly a plane, and discoveries she makes while in the air all serve to give interesting subplots while the cast are in the sky. That said, some elements don't work as well as they could. For example, Wahlberg's character tells Harris and Winston that he effectively spent his whole life in prison, and therefore isn't intimidated by the prospect. If that's true, where would he find the time to actually fly a plane?
Deputy Harris, hope you like flying. Beautiful day for it. I never flew U.S. Marshal before.
Are you English?
No, I'm not English. Why?
No, because you are pretty.
He does tend to get up from injury like Michael Myers, but does he also have to replicate Myers' inexplicably instinctive mastery of modes of transportation? How does he tank such significant damage from one of Harris's weapons? And this isn't much of a spoiler, given that her simply killing the assassin would be too simple a resolution for something beyond a short film, but there's a point at which she could, does not, and any U.S. Marshal would. The subplots make sense, but certain moments are too baffling to take in. It's a simple and often palatable thriller, but a far cry from the relative narrative excellence of some of Gibson's other directorial outings like Braveheart or Hacksaw Ridge. In such a tight situation as Flight Risk, the narrative and performances are placed in atypically precarious positions. On the one hand, there's ample dedicated screen time for the cast, with everything in tight focus. On the other hand, it's sometimes difficult to master narrative cohesion. If the movie is too simple, it can get boring or easily stretched too long. But if it's overly complex, there's a risk that plot threads don't ring true. Here, the simplicity puts the elements that don't work into tight contrast. Some performances are far better than others, and they aren't all consistently memorable or engaging enough to carry the film over the finish line. That's particularly true in light of plotting that's sometimes repetitive, nonsensical, or underdeveloped. There's surely promise in the premise, but Flight Risk is one journey that doesn't quite get off the ground. Pros. Mark Wahlberg makes for a believably frightening sociopathic assassin, and there are scenes where that's put to great use. The subplots themselves are well used to stretch out a premise that could be too threadbare, and are well structured into the narrative. Cons. Some of the storylines or key choices fail to make full sense, and it drags the simple story down. The performances aren't all written with sufficient layers, or given them enough in performance, to carry the film.
He's very disappointed in you, Winston, and he wants you dead.
Don't shoot him, we need him!
Mayday, mayday.